Hello, and welcome to another Northstar Plays Alpha Centauri. Hope you folks are well. Took a bit of a break after the last video. Um, this would be my third video for the day, but one was a clicker game that doesn't require much brain power, and I'm getting pretty exhausted. It might be all I can do. I've been looking back, and it seems I've, for the past 5 days, been averaging about 4 videos a day. Some days I can only manage 2 or 3. Some days I manage 5. Um, one was like a little 15-minute videos, so it might be slightly less than, but so 4 45-minute videos a day, about 3 hours. That gives an idea of if I were, I'm exhausted then. This if I were able to work, I couldn't do that. That's not 7 days a week. It's about for a run of about 5 days. I could, in theory, work 2 hours if I can do 3 hours of stuff, but I lose about an hour of energy commuting, and time for that matter. So if I were forced to work, I'd be able to work about 10 hours a week. And I would have to, because give my car to family so they can get to work, I would have to Uber each way, which actually costs more than I could make at any job reasonably, um, unless it was a very good paying job, and even then it would barely come out ahead. I could make $15 an hour and barely come out ahead. I mean, that's not very good paying, but if it's a $21 Uber ride each way, which unfortunately around here would be, in suburbs. So I get would get fucked if I were forced to work in order to keep Medicaid food stamps, and I wouldn't be able to even keep up that rate for long because my health would decline. I could only do weeks like that for a little while, and I would get sicker and sicker and sicker because I can't keep up this kind of cadence week after week. A lot of time, this is actually, I'd say, more than 50% more than I can normally do. So actually, there'd be a lot of like sustainable rates, like 6 hours of work a week. It's insane. But yeah, the U.S. is going crazy, going fascist. Trump goes and decides he wants a military parade on the 250th anniversary of the Army, which just happens to be a parade on his birthday as well. Parade ground. Parade kind of comes to mind thinking about that. Um, Let me tell you from my time in ROTC, the many, many, many times I've talked to people who were in the Army or prior to that conversation or were at the time of the conversation, which, by the way, the way I've met more Army people than anything else in my life was not ROTC. It was actually traveling by bus a lot. Because I was poor and I was going to school one part of the country and my family a very different part of the country. I could only afford bus trips, which took forever. We're talking like 20-hour bus trips, so I didn't take them too often. But at the bus stations, I met lots of people in military uniform. I would usually go talk to them, especially my ROTC days. So many people from the Army. So no one I met at the bus stations, no one I met in ROTC, no one I met later when I tried to Army OCS because the ROTC battalion didn't actually try and process me for a medical waiver. So I tried with the Army. The Army guy didn't gave up on it. Tried with the Marines. The Marine guy actually did it, got processed, and I got approved for it when he's the only recruiter who ever actually did the processing. We're talking not now with long COVID, it'd be impossible. We're talking, in case you didn't follow this, haven't been following the series, we're talking for a cough, a child could cough, a medical waiver for that, which is ridiculous that it should even need it. But I did develop a cough late in life that won't go away. I mean, I had a little bit of a cough actually already, but it got worse. And that wasn't actually documented, so they couldn't go off that. It was just childhood supposedly asthma, and I was able to prove I didn't have asthma. Um, so yeah, this is when I was more right wing than I am today. I'm now a Marxist. I had a fun conversation with my mother about this not too long ago. She proceeded to claim, she's, by the way, to give you a slight idea of her political stance, she is to the right of Bernie Sanders, uh, but maybe to the left of like Hillary Clinton. So torn between, she was willing to vote for Bernie, but he was in some ways to the left of her. So not exactly a super left-wing person. Maybe in American terms, yes, but definitely not in global perspective. And freaking brainwashed as hell against socialism. She proceeded to call me commie, which I am not. Commies in American parlance are Marxist Leninists. That's members of communist parties. I'm not a member of any. Well, I did vote for the PSL 1 year. Would they consider me a member? I don't know. This past one, I was not going to vote for Kamala Harris because she's an evil, and I was a state that's it wasn't going to matter. It was not a swing state. So yeah, it didn't affect wasn't if there was no way in heck that state was going to decide the outcome of the election. Um, if if you're not a swing state, there's no reason you need to vote only red or blue. You can vote third party because it's not going to change the outcome unless huge numbers of people do that in non-swing states and turn the state into a swing state, and then the politicians actually have to campaign in that state. But the two-party system is broken and stupid and anti-democratic. Democrat nuts and Democratic parties, and it's not democracy. It allows there to be just two parties that billionaires donate to both of and control both of. Um, it's the same people who donate to both parties a long time. I mean, there are some ideologues who vote who will donate only to the Republicans. It's less common that ones who vote. I mean, who donate only to the Democrats, but there are some. Um, it's more often there's people who donate to both parties and some hard right ideologues who would go Republican only, and there's actually not many Democrat only donors. Um, which is why the Democrats are weak and don't oppose the Republicans too strongly because all their donors are also donating to the Republicans. Because that's what the rich do to ensure no matter who wins, they get their way in the end. Um, so, yeah, but I still think my mother, she's a complete idiot about history and knows nothing about it. She probably thinks that that Marx is like a Russian or something, which is bullshit. No, he was not. Marx was born in Germany and went west, never east. He didn't write about Russia. He never traveled to Russia. He went to England, which is where he lived, in London. And he wrote the Bloody Communist Manifesto when he took a trip to Belgium. He posted in a square in Belgium. Engels did most of his writing, splitting his time between London and Paris. He did visit Italy some, in Austria a little bit, and Germany a little, never really further east than that. The entire origins of communism were countries, Germany, Italy, and west of that. Lenin was on the very outskirts of the Marxist movement, and he had different ideas than most Marxists. And unfortunately, his ideas are now the predominant Marxist ideas because he was the only one who was ever able to help lead a successful socialist revolution. Therefore, a lot of people thought his ideas must have been better because he succeeded rather than that the Russian government was especially weak. He was, in a way, lucky, although it was still an incredibly hard thing to do. Socialist revolution. And right, maritime command's about to grow, so I'm just checking what's going to grow before I end the turn. So I can then look to make sure pops get assigned and wisely. That's why the main branches of Marxism that, like most parties, are either Marxist-Leninists or Marxist-Leninist-Maoist these days. Because Lenin and Mao are the ones who led successful socialist revolutions. You also do see some Trotskyites, because the Trotskyites are like a freaking cult, where no matter how many times history shows their ideas are not necessarily going to work, at least in the way they do them, because I would argue they have some good points, but they have to adapt and change some of their ideas, or they'll never succeed. Um, one of the being the socialism has to end up basically turning the whole world socialist, or it won't last forever because the capitalists will never stop trying to undermine it. That's true, but there's the Trotskyites are just stubborn and they won't adapt their methods, and they're like freaking cult of personality around Trotsky. But aside from Trotskyites, who is also a leader of the Soviet Revolution, so Stalin, Trotsky, you can really consider the Marxist Leninists who aren't Trotskyites to be following Stalin's footsteps, and the rest to be following Trotsky, of those who aren't Marxist Maoists, which is really taking Stalin's ideas and adapting to Mao. Um, yeah, Stalin actually did some writing politically and didn't contribute greatly, but he did a good job of summarizing Lenin's ideas for the average man or woman. Um, this reputation as this horrible, evil, brutal dictator. But that doesn't change, first of all, that all he did was summarize in his writings. Mostly, it's not like he made huge original contributions. So it's like saying someone who writes Cliff Notes shouldn't be listened to because they're a horrible person. Um, and some of those crimes have definitely been exaggerated and vilified just because he was the first leader of the Soviet Union when the Cold War began. Like, there have been other ways, but he was the one who was in charge when the Cold War began. So he was endlessly vilified, and then every subsequent Soviet leader was vilified and demonized because um, the U.S. always demonizes the leaders of rival nations and powers. The more dangerous a power is the U.S., the more their leader gets demonized. That is always the case, or the more difficult it would be to get the population to support a war. Um, you know, like Iraq wasn't much of a threat to U.S., but Saddam Hussein was demonized to an enormous degree because it would be difficult to get Americans to support a war like that otherwise. He might have deserved some of that, but Gaddafi, was it the leader of Libya, was demonized endlessly, and he doesn't have the same record of gassing villages that Saddam does, but we still endlessly demonized him. And then when that led him to supporting groups the U.S. didn't like, it became a self-fulfilling prophecy. But it started off with just, yeah, Libya was, by the way, because of its socialist legacy, the wealthiest country in Africa in GDP per capita, the wealthiest in Africa. So Egypt and anywhere south or west of that. You not counting Israel because that's technically an Asian continent and was wealthier, but Israel is also a settler colonial state built on genocide. So, and now it's horribly poor because it was bombed to smithereens for no good reason. The Arab Spring and all that happened, and it became an excuse to bomb the fuck out of Libya. Um, People can argue there was a good reason to bomb Yugoslavia, but there was no good reason to bomb Libya. This is just what the U.S. does. It bombs country after country, demonizes, and makes excuses. Also can maintain dominance and control. We are the big bads, and if you don't fucking believe that, we have supported no fewer than 6 genocides for absolute certain. 6 genocides, okay? The United States supported the Indonesian genocide, the East Timor genocide, the Bangladeshi genocide, the first Congo genocide, the second Congo genocide, the Guatemalan genocide. And then if you don't believe the Gaza genocide is a genocide, then fine, you have 6. But it's 7 with that. Yeah, you notice there were 2 Congo genocides because there were 2 different periods separated by more than 20 years. Both genocides supported by the United States. So, yeah, one in I think it was the 70s, and then there's the more recent one that's still ongoing in eastern Congo, which is supported by the United States. So the main instigator outside of the area is actually the UK, by way of Rwanda, which has been sometimes called the Israel of Africa, in that it's become a genocidal state that's a Western puppet. This is after, of course, they had their own genocide where they're killing each other, and the people they're trying to wipe out are those ethnically related to one of the groups that was involved in that genocide. So it's, in a way, it's a continuation of the Rwandan genocide, except this time it's being done with Western instigation. So All right, force expands. Hydrology Council.
Production complete.
No, the worms didn't attack the Spartans yet. Maybe they will, though. But yeah, a nation that does that many genocides in less than 100 years, not the good guys. I mean, I think if you did the math, it'd be something like a genocide every 12 years that the U.S. supports. The Guatemalan genocide is particularly egregious because the way that the U.S. aid, which good riddance to those fuckers, it's sad to see an end to foreign aid, but it doesn't have to go through U.S. aid. The way that U.S. aid directly aided the Guatemalan genocide, helping to support and train the police officers who helped to carry it out. um, they played a secondary role to the army, but it was part army, part police who carried out the Guatemalan genocide of the Mayan people, because the Mayan people opposed exploiting certain natural resources in areas. So the government, far right government backed by the United States, turned around and murdered them all, or at least as many as it could, which led to insurgency, which led to an excuse of we must burn this village because they supported quote terrorists, i.e., people who were resisting their own genocide. This is the same game as Israel bombing whole Palestinian villages to smithereens because that village was supporting resistance to their occupation. The Maya, many of them want independence, and they want to stop being murdered. Wanted to stop being murdered. They're not really being murdered now, although they're still suffering a lot of violence from the state in both Mexico and Guatemala because they exist in both areas. I actually had roommates who were Mayan at one point, um, or part Mayan. I forget his name. It was some ethnic group where they were like half Mayan, but because they have a name for that for being half Mayan. Uh, where did that force expand? There. Oh, no more remove fungus. Okay, that saves me some turns. Uh, let's get right on to work on the condenser. I was going to do the force to grow back eventually. Um, yeah, when the forest is finally replaced, I'll get some minerals in UN headquarters. 8 turns. Huh. Guess I'll just go into recon rovers at that point, since I won't be doing transports then. um, right. I want this to go to that monolith. Cool. Definitely save. I want to accidentally roll back to before that force. That was great luck. Um, but yeah, so I'm a Marxist, but not a Marxist-Leninist because Marxist-Leninism, specifically um, the doctrine of democratic centralism that Lenin pushed, leads to a one-party state. And one-party state, no matter how many democratic institutions you have, is not an effective and free democracy. You need multi-party socialism. And you can't have that under Marxist-Leninism because the way democratic centralism ends up working is always gets you a one-party state. Because the idea that all socialists just merge together, try and quote reconcile their views and form a single party, that leads to a one-party state. Since then, the other parties are capitalist, which maybe quite correctly are suppressed, those parties, but an example of a country that is socialist that has multiple parties is actually North Korea. Although North Korea is not really fully Marxist, they are a weird hybrid of monarchy and Marxism, this ideology called Juche, and I definitely do not endorse that, but I'm just pointing out that you can have multiple parties under socialism. Um, a lot of the parties there are small regional ones, so they each have like 3% of the vote. I think the leading party still gets 70 something percent of the votes there, so it's not a real challenge to power, but you can have large parties. It's not just to point out that not all socialist countries do this, merge everything into a single party, and it's not necessary. Um, I have to point out they don't do it because otherwise you get some assholes be like, "Oh, socialism because the authoritarianism." No, socialism is not inherently authoritarian. That's a lie. Capitalism is inherently authoritarian. It tends towards authoritarianism. That doesn't mean you can't have capitalist democracies. We do have them, but the nature of having billionaires is billionaires push authoritarianism. So it's projection to claim that it is socialism that leads to authoritarianism. If there's any ideology it does, it's capitalism. All right. Because when you have people with enormous wealth, they don't want to lose that wealth through taxes or nationalization of their assets. If socialists threaten to gain power, billionaires turn around and support fascism. They did it in Italy after the 2 red years, where Italy nearly went communist. They did it in Germany after the Spartacus League rebellion, where they or uprising, where they nearly took control of the country, and Germany nearly went communist. And then the KPD continued to be strong and threatened to win enough power in the German parliament, essentially, to form a ruling coalition. So and in fact could have formed one with the SPD instead of the Nazis. When Hitler took power, the only reason he was able to take power is because the Social Democrats refused to form a coalition with the Communists. Otherwise, those two would have had the largest bloc, and the smaller parties would have just been picked up by them, like the Nazis ended up forming a party, a coalition with the conservatives, like center-right party, and then they vacuumed up some of the smaller parties to get with the numbers they needed for a coalition government. That would not have happened if the SPD and the KPD had formed a coalition, which the KPD proposed, and the Social Democrats said no. They basically thought better dead than red, and that's what they ended up. The more militant leaders, the SPD, were murdered by the Nazis. So, right. So they got their wish. It is incredibly morbid and doesn't feel great to say that, but they should have realized that Hitler was an evil prick and that it was better to ally the communists no matter how much they hated them to let Hitler take power. Of course, the communists could have realized the existential threat was a little more conciliatory. They did say, first Hitler, then our turn next, or something. There was like a slogan, something along those lines. Not they didn't definitely support Hitler, but they thought he wouldn't be able to hold on to power and his regime would collapse, just like people think that Trump's grab at fascism will collapse almost immediately. I mean, it will, but it'll take maybe 20 or 15 years if he can successfully establish a fascist government, which he's trying to do, but it takes time to do that. We're in the middle of a quote slow moving coup. You've heard that phrase before, and it's not really been true all the time, but it's definitely true right now. Um, right. Wasn't the path I expected, but it worked. Um, almost moved another unit somewhere I didn't want though. Hmm. All this effort, haven't found any worms. I'm starting to wonder whether I can. No, I think I've spawned them with movement, even in visible areas, to sensors before. As I say, I was starting to wonder whether they can. I'm like, no, actually, I seem to remember. I'd have to check my videos. But yeah, let's talk about socialism, and I'm gonna go planned economy soon, which the game description says isn't socialism, but it is the preferred economic strategy of the free drones, who are definitely space socialists. So I'm gonna call bullshit on that one. Pretty sure this it was just we can't have socialism in this sci-fi future where it might actually work. Especially the network backbone removes most of the malices. I forget if that's a project. Uh, Eliminates negative effects of cybernetic. Oh, not planned. Uh, well, cybernetic uh, does balance the efficiency penalty of plan, so indirectly it does, and it gives you planet score, which helps make up the fact you're not running green, and research, which helps make up for the lower energy production than under free market. Yep, cyber socialism. I mean, that's literally a it's not really about AIs, but it could be. If you guys have ever heard of what was it, Project Cybersign, whatever the fuck, what was it? When Chile elected a socialist, one of the few democratic socialist countries that ever existed, Salvador Allende's Chile, he did not have a majority. He was plurality elected. That is, he had like 45% of the vote or something. But that was enough because no other party had more. I don't think any of the other parties were actually willing to form a coalition with them, but no one else was able to put together a coalition that was bigger than his. So yeah, and I think Chile had a presidential rather than parliamentary system anyhow. Didn't it? Anyways, minority government, but he had strong support from certain segments of the population, like the miners and the farmers in certain areas. Chile doesn't have many farmers, though. Mostly imports its food, which became a problem when the U.S. put sanctions on it and cut off those food imports. But Nixon, he talked about making the economy scream. This is a famous quote. He said he very famously undermined their economy. Oh yeah, it's implied that I wonder if the leader profile says it. Oh boy, not. This crazy lady is supposed to be from Chile, Corazon Santiago. So she's literally a Chilean fascist. Because, yeah, the CIA replaced Allende. They tried to do a coup, failed, murdered the people who stopped the coup from succeeding, tried again, and succeeded in replacing Salvador Allende. And by the second coup, they cutting off Chile from food imports, which caused food shortages, though not mass starvation, because Allende's government made sure that people at least didn't starve to death, but food was scarce and all sorts of consumer goods thanks to U.S. sanctions and intentional economic sabotage. There was also famine in Mexico at the time. There was a failure of the corn crop. And so Chile had historically imported a lot of corn from Mexico, so they couldn't source it from there, even though Mexico was not participating in the sanctions. Um, a combination of food shortages and economic sabotage by CIA and assassinating the generals who prevented the first coup succeeding, and the CIA succeeded in putting a fascist Augusto Pinochet in power in Chile. And then we get the hyper-militaristic, hyper-anti-communist Chilean fascists, and thus we get the Spartans in this game, who are very clearly ideological sense of Augusto Pinochet. They probably it makes sense for them to have an affinity for free market, if not for the fact they have an affinity for values power. So, because Pinochet was hyper capitalist, super neoliberal. The Chicago boys actually went and helped the economists from the University of Chicago School of Economics, which actually most economists there were actually left wing at the time, but there was this cadre of right wingers whose careers are being inflated by some big banks in America because neoliberalism is very much in the interest of big banks and billionaires. And so these sorts of people, the banks and billionaires, were funding, like giving fellowships and stuff to these assholes. And the Chicago boys, who Nixon ended up bringing into his administration later, anyways, they went down to Chile and drew up the whole economic plan and helped rewrite the Constitution of Chile to embed neoliberalism in the Constitution. Neoliberalism is a right-wing ideology, by the way, if that wasn't clear. Gets confusing for Americans who think liberal means left-wing because of the two parties in America. We have a liberal party, the Democrats, which is actually a center-right ideology. At best, their ideology, they're liberal, but liberal parties can sometimes be center right instead of like far right. Neoliberalism extends from center right to much further to the right than that. And then we have a hyper neoliberal or conservative party, the Republicans, now a fascist party, but in the past it was a mix of social conservatism and neoliberalism. Yeah, there are two neoliberal parties in the U.S., and there are no progressive parties, no socialist parties anymore. There was at one time, although they never had a serious chance because of the rigged two-party system, which makes third parties spoilers, but kind of like how the Greens still exist, there used to be small socialist parties. Eugene Debs actually got over 1 million votes for president at one point as a socialist. So, yeah, they used to be bigger. But the FBI worked on crushing them, making their leaders have, quote, accidents and shit like that. To deny, but there's a lot of suspicious deaths of socialist leaders and other people who got imprisoned and otherwise persecuted. So, yeah. America's not a free country and never has been. It's a lie told to people. If you believe it, you're living a dream. You're not actually living a reality. Cool. Made that move. Now I can stick this here. Why does it want to go north so bad? Point of that is to protect these formers. This former, in case of mindworms, they should protect them before. Forgot. Not that there's much risk here, but there's some. Some of these are definitely at least out of sensor range. And this isn't even visible. So there's got to be some odds of mindworms, even if they can only spawn on non-visible tiles. I think they can spawn anywhere that's out of sensor range. Doesn't have to be fought. I really should look up what the rules are for mindworm spawning. It's got to be written down somewhere.
Terraform complete.
Yay, energy. Yep, goes into econ. So I need 2 scout patrols here. I guess we'll send him here. And they failed to make that move. So in case I need her in there or something. The reason for that is I am not guarding this farm. I don't have the units to guard it right now. I could probably send this rover now. Take another turn, but hmm. Hmm. Yeah, it's gonna be worked in one turn. So we'll get a farm, then a mine. Maybe another farm mine. Only place where I might consider replacing those soon is here in the core. Or even if I run planned economics without anything that increases efficiency, and so for really terrible -3 efficiency, um, still shouldn't be too much waste right near the headquarters. Um, I may wait to actually make that switch, and though I have some energy here, though. Otherwise, my tech rate will grind to a halt. I don't know. Plus, it does cost energy to switch. Social engineering choices. It's not free. Mm. Remove the fungus, or I could. Seven? Yeah, it's gonna grow super quick after this. So actually, I should just go north. Cool.
Request confirmation.
16 energy for 7 minerals. There's no immediate use of it, of the transport. These formers are both in position already. We'll need to move again for a little. Approximately, let's see. Farm is 3 turns of work. Mine is 6, 9. So 4 more turns. On the 5th, there'll be 1 available to move. Should have the transport there in time. That one might benefit from rushing. Yeah, I can rush when I have fewer minerals to go. Alright. Sorry if I got a little overly emphatic before about the some of these topics.
Bot recovered.
Oh no. Xenofungal bloom? Really? Darn it. I mean, it was in the midst of a bunch of fungus anyhow. It's a lot worse than Alien Crossfire, where those blooms often spawn fungal towers, but here it just adds fungus to a couple more tiles. I think there's a sea fungus in this tile. No, there might have not been fungus there, so it might have been 3 fungus added. Oh well. Could have been worse. It's not a terrible outcome by any means. Not a great one, but shit happens. Hmm. I'm going to send this unit here, where it can't really be attacked except from that one direction. So, sort of safe. Ish. Extract can enter World Food Program. Boom. And I probably want this next to the pod. Next turn when the scout probably moves into. Yeah. Could hunt for mine worms on the river, but I think failed to move. Let's see if it got there. Might have been pragmatic, close enough to pragmatically. Whatever. I probably want both these. I'll probably actually move the rover in here to pop the pod so that I have 2 units with 1 attack if a bunch of my worms spawn. If that's not the case, this scout patrol might be able to move here. This rover could then move through there to get out here and explore. Scout patrol might help escort a alien artifact or something back. We'll see what I get. All right. Yeah, sorry if I got a little over emphatic with stuff. This stuff is honestly, it's enraging when you realize all the things you weren't taught or brainwashed into, being blind to about history. I mean, some stuff's out there in the open and you just don't see it because you're not looking for it. Some some stuff you're just not taught. Like I was not taught about the Indonesian genocide at all in high school, for instance. I had to learn about that years later. Why? Because the U.S. funded that genocide. Therefore, we won't teach people about it, which is insane and evil, and just goes to prove the U.S. is not so free. You can't criticize the past if you're not taught about it, and people aren't taught about it not because of it was a bad school system or something, but because you have these right wingers who get on school committees and censor what things children are taught, so they don't learn about the crimes of the U.S. in the past and say we're protecting our children from communist influence and other nonsense. You literally see people who used to do that stuff, and they still do it without the communist thing, but as much. But these days, well, until recently, now Trump is crying communism everywhere, and there are very few communists in the United States. The PSL did get decent turnout in the presidential elections, but that was because people hated Kamala Harris mostly. A lot of those people weren't even socialists who voted for her, I don't think. It, just like the person probably didn't realize that she's actually a Maoist. I didn't say who she. Claudia de la Cruz, the person who was running with the PSL. At least the PSL was a Maoist party. technically. Um, so probably got, I don't know, might have been over, made a beat Eugene Debs' record for the most votes a socialist ever seen in the U.S. Of course, the country is a much bigger population now, so getting a million is less impressive now, or a little over a million. I'd have to check the numbers. Hold on. Okay, well, nowhere near a million, unsurprisingly, I guess, given how shit American politics are, that even when people don't live in swing states, they can't vote for someone other than red or blue team because people apply stupid sports logic to it, and then they say you're a bad person if you don't vote for these. No, down ticket it matters. I voted Democrat all down ticket, for instance, because local elections, it can actually be that a party's not. I mean, country state's not a swing state, but the senator or the representative can switch. But for president, if you're not a swing state, it does not fucking matter who you vote for. 168,000. That is nowhere near the 1 million that Eugene Debs got. And I mean, that would be like him, that would be like 50,000 votes in his era in terms of, relative population, 50 or 60. So, yeah, 6% of his relative showing compared of the population. Yeah, socialism is greatly, greatly weakened, and it's weakened because of paranoia and brain rot and all the propaganda that people put out there and then accuse, ironically, socialists of being propagandized. An ideology that people know nothing about. Most Americans know nothing about socialism. They just know they should hate it because of dumb propaganda thinking it's literally 1984, the heat of the day. People have no idea why they hate something. They just told they should hate it. I mean, sometimes they believe some utter nonsense about socialism, but usually things they believe aren't even close to true. Socialists want to take your stuff, your car, your house. No, no, they don't. That's personal property. Socialists only want to socialize private property, that is, farms, mines, factories, ports, railroads. Those are the things socialists want to take. So, unless you own a railroad or a port or a multi million dollar freighter or a factory or a mine, you're fine. Socialists don't want anything you have. That's personal property, and if anything, they want you to have more of personal property. Because they want your wages to go up. They want you to have more of that stuff. They want you to have no farms or mines or factories, but they want people to have higher standards of living. That's the exact opposite of what people think socialists want because they know nothing about it. And the average American voter acts like a moron and believes the propaganda and doesn't think for themselves. At least I questioned this stuff for a long time, and it was hard to find stuff out when you're brainwashed and propagandized. But if you question it, eventually you'll find the truth. It just takes a while. That's why I talk about this stuff so other people can, maybe learn the lies they've been told sooner, realize that maybe there's something they haven't been told. Of course, they don't just tune out. Like my first video in the series got a record 110 views already. The second 30 or something, like way less people because a lot of people probably, oh, he's a socialist, I'm not going to listen to him. Anyways, I'm talking too much. Transport will be done. 8 turns. I could eventually rush it. Base grow in 3 turns. Ooh. Ready then. Probably want to do a farm here because it also have alluvial council, but farm maybe. All on the river. At that point, I could get the transport there if I rush it to either help go here or I'd probably use it for the calling pod, though. I mean, for 10 turns of investment, I can get a mineral. For 3 turns of investment, I can get an energy. Yeah, I'm gonna want the energy. Farm time then. Boom. Oh. I wanted this one to be the last, because it's closest to upriver. Then if the former gets a transport here, there's 2/3 chance the transport can get there in 1 turn. No, actually it's the calling pod, but get the transfer done first. I could do that and force this tile maybe. Nah. Well, 1/3 chance I can get the former up here, or I'm moist. Oh, I see. Okay, yeah. Use a transport to get 1 turn the former here, guaranteed on the river. This Roy Moist tile is probably the best one to farm next. Because, yeah, Alluvial Council add an extra pop to this area. It'll have 3. And then pretty soon there'll be 4, so I'll need all of these farmed. I could do a road here. It's a rocky tile, so eventually I might mine it. But, and the road will help with that. But more importantly, maybe I'll just do it from this flat area. It's quicker. Yeah, would make sense. Try and get the colony pod here nice and quick for a nutrient farm. Sorry, a condenser farm. Yeah, getting tired. All right. Yep. Yep. Maybe I prioritize this first. In which case, would transport move? The start path is from here. It doesn't matter. Boom, boom, or no, the most direct to be from here. I went there, so 1 tile in between. Oh well. I'll figure it out. If I could plant a condenser on this flat tile. So if I did that later, did a forest there. Different terraform ideas. Let's see. Too many unknowns, anyways, like mine worms and stuff. Shall I leave this here, or no? I think I want the scout patrol there. Then it can reach this rocky tile if, say, a mine worm shows up and weakens the rover a whole bunch. partial repair before going back to city to full repair or something, because if it's 2 damage, I'll only have 1 move instead of 2. Alright. Anyhow, guess I should not go right on the border in case there's Spartan units. If they see me, they might demand tribute again. I'd like to explore here fully so I can see more of the ocean tiles and maybe find if there's pods. Hmm. Nice. That means that former can't suffer collateral damage because they can't be attacked directly. Hmm. Let's get that unit healing. And my arms around this way. I bet they'll attack the scout patrol. I won't even see it coming. Fairly soon if I go here, it doesn't make the Spartans contact me again. Because I could still see them.
Turn complete.
I know a little more of where the fungus is. Be interesting if that scout patrol ends up dead. That would be an opportunity. Bloody Spartans. Led by a Chilean fascist. Santiago is definitely a fascist, in case that wasn't clear. Hyper-militarist, authoritarian. Probably leans right economically. That's fascism in a nutshell. Oh yeah, strong, everyone collaborating for the strength of the military and the supposed good of society. That's also a fascist thing. Like the whole Spartan, they're all a giant army basically. That's textbook fascism, the Spartans. There's no question they're fascists. This isn't anyone I don't like is a fascist. No, this is literally they meet the definition, all the check boxes they check. They're 100% fascists. Skimship, monitoring agents. Recon rover. Transport. Back to rover spam. Rover spam. Rover spam. Transport.
Request confirmation.
It's only one
Request
extra energy.
Confirmation.
Yeah, let's rush that laser skimship. Followed by rover spam. Yeah, the rovers are very much the backbone of my current army, but when I get impact weaponry, then the infantry's portion will be filled out by impact infantry. And some of the rovers eventually upgrade to impact rovers. The most elite ones, I figure. It's not horrendously expensive. It's 3 energy and mineral, basically. Well, if I'm running planet, it's a little worse than that because it acts as if it's 10 mineral cost. Well, I mean, it's 30 regardless of what my industry score is, so. Yep. But yeah, mobility is critical, so most of my actual battle force will be in rovers, and the infantry will have transports to increase their mobility so they can keep up. Can't necessarily beat the Spartans in raw power, I have to outmaneuver them. And, you know, as the doctrine mobility Spartan quote says, mobility, or was it flexibility? No, the mobility quote was actually a law, which is fitting, I guess. But yeah, flexibility and mobility, they're both critical here. Where are my formers? Fungus removal. Using the terrain there. Building condenser here. Sure, create a rainy tile. It's more, this will become rainy. Useful when I lift the nutrient restriction. This will become rainy rolling. I'll do a farm mine probably for hydrology council or monitoring agency, and that's already rolling rainy. This will become rolling moist. As well this. And these can both be, well, farm solar collector there. And I don't know, probably point is, yeah, at least 3 tiles benefit from the condenser, plus the tile it's on, of course. So 4. Reasonably cost effective in the long run.
Request confirmation.
16 for 7. Yeah, no. Alright, let's save. Let's get my first skimship done. New force.
Production complete.
Peacekeeper engineers built their first naval vessel, academician Zakharov of the university already founded the first naval corps in 2152. Ooh, he's way ahead of me in that. I mean, that would be a reasonable time frame for not having tech stagnation to build your first naval unit. I got the pop-up of force expanding twice, but it may have only done it once. I think it did it here, cutting back from the forest agency. I want to say here. So I think I did get 2 gross, despite it saying 1. Either way, these guys haven't seen the mine worm yet, interestingly. First Skimship. Green. So certainly not a good unit, but I don't think command center is ground units, so yeah, it's not like it could have done it. World health. Oh, my people are new at seafaring, so I guess it's not too surprising. Probably don't want to go through fungus, so I don't have no choice but to go through fungus. That's annoying. Minerals, sea fungus. Eventually, I probably want to raise this terrain. Minerals on land are better than at sea, and if I raise this tile, these adjacent ones will both become land. There'll only be a couple of these necks, which I think ships move through. Yeah. So, just 2 ways in and out of this body of water. Could even raise those and just create a little inland sea if I really wanted. Wouldn't be freshwater, unfortunately, like the freshwater sea here, but still wouldn't have to worry about any enemy naval units or isles, the deep ones that cleared the fungus. I definitely want some sea formers for kelp farms eventually. If no other reason that they can crowd out the fungus. Getting that done for me.
Terraform complete.
And that scout patrol failed the move. So much for protecting the formers of the infantry. So bases actually can't suffer collateral damage. Forgot that, so could stat multiple scout patrols somewhere if I really wanted, but reason to, and there are always the threat of vials the deep coming out of the fungus, so. Eventually, it's planned that decreases my base limit. I could start getting bureaucracy drones. Defense command, too. That's another thing. Could put a condenser east of defense command for nutrients. And Bishopopka. 2 nutrients and stuff. What? If I raise the terrain up, the alternative would be, right, I need to raise it 2 energy. 2 nutrients equals a specialist, which can produce 3 energy with no waste. That's better. When space gets a size 5, that is, which would have 3 nutrient surplus. It would work a forest, size 4. Be down to 2, and then when it grew again, the 5th citizen could just be a specialist, if nothing else. Technician, most likely, but maybe a librarian. Ooh. Make this forest rainy and rolling. Rolling and rainy, which could do a farm mine then. Cool. I like to assume these guys who are in the fungus like that spread out. Maybe they're looking for mined worm eggs because, you know, they do hatch from eggs if you caught them early before they hatched. Presumably, then mine worms can't come out of that area. I mean, the planet is not infinitely, you know, it's only got so much xenofungus, so much wildlife. People make it out like it's this mystical, godlike creature. No, it's a giant brain. You'll learn more about it. I'm not gonna spoil it for people who don't know the story that well or at all. But it's a planet-sized brain, so that much. Boom, to protect that farmer. veteran rover in civil rights. Since I might have just one rover dealing with mine worms around here. Someone got to replace sensor arrays with solar panels, may move sensors further out. Tiles are less productive. Saved form returns my dim here, but they are blocking better yields. You know, getting a little nervous about sparring, so start moving units towards the frontier a little more. You never know when they might declare war. I don't know how long peace. It might not have really been 10 years since I didn't accept what they said. I said only 30 energy tribute. Or it might not even be locked into. They might not even have a certain amount of time it tries to do peace. That might be like Civ 4, where you can guarantee 10 turns of peace if you agree to provide tribute to the AI. Eyes on the border. If I saw Spartan units massing on the border or even already in my territory, I know they were about to attack. So, yeah. Plus, just let me see if I was on a base that didn't tell me and it was in the range, or no, actually the border would change. Or if they put like a sensor array there, I would know. As unlikely as it is, that I would do such a thing. this point, I'm just stationing a few units around. I shouldn't hang on the fungus, honestly. If I do get tapped by my worm, the fungus is gonna get obliterated. Done enough trawling the fungus for mine worms too. I hope to get some. I had hoped to get some for training purposes, but hasn't happened for a while now. And war's getting too close to replace losses. You know, I mean, if I lost some rovers way before war, I would reduce support costs and I have time to rebuild them, and the survivors would have more experience. Plus, I get energy, which could be used for occasional economic investments. At this point, the percentage of combat power loss is getting low. I'm assuming war is imminent with the Spartans. Maybe a bad assumption. Maybe not. Hmm. Yeah, forests also provide defensive bonuses, so that's worth noting. Forests and rocky terrain both. It's probably one reason people like forests so much. Well, they inhibit movement. Of course, all the quote alpha strategies developed around multiplayer and hyper aggressive gameplay. People always think about how to conquer their neighbors. It's not like anyone ever goes for transcendence victories except as a double win in multiplayer. Like they've already won, they just for kicks. At least it's kind of my experience with other Civ games. No one ever goes for the like science victories. Earlier Civ games, and it's probably different with like Civ 5 because of different pacing. Hmm. Blame my worms. It's got to be around here somewhere. Hmm. Do I dare try going the fungus here? Worm could have Yeah, I think I can risk it for a turn. Nope, didn't make it this turn. Oh well. Probably swap those off next turn, but I did that because if the Scout Patrol failed to move, it would still be in the city. If I succeed, I could still keep the city defended. If I'd done this Scout Patrol first, would have been stuck in terrain I didn't need to defend. If I did the Forum first, it could have lost the Forum turn when the Scout Patrol could have paved the way. So, yeah, just shuffling units around. Probably want the hardened unit in the city, though, next time. Guess the city is more important than a Former. Whoever's in the fungus is probably as good as dead if attacked. Hmm. Farm planted. Next up, mines. All these farms around World Food Program. It's starting to look like a real World Food Program. All right, geez. Well, cut the video here. My jokes are getting way too. Hey, if I make this any longer, I have to cut it. So I wish you folks the best. Take care of each other. Be kind to yourselves, and may you always find guiding star Leo. Until next time, it's Northstar. Adieu, and best luck.